Good evening. I'd like to open the meeting for the Carver Finance Committee for January 17th, 2019 at this time. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. I'd like to thank Area 58 for coming tonight to record this, and I want to make an announcement that there was no recording from the last Finance Committee meeting. I think there was a communication gap, a misunderstanding between Area 58 and myself. So if it was my fault, I apologize. Area 58 has also apologized. Mary Ann McLeod, our recording secretary, takes incredible minutes. Once they're approved tonight, they will be posted on the Finance Committee website, so that will be all set. Thank everyone for coming. Bill, George Callahan is home sick tonight. He's got the flu, so we're a board of 5. Tonight, public comment. Anyone? Oh, I got scared for a second. We have the presentation of the budgets for public safety, police, fire, and EMS. You gentlemen are more than welcome to decide who wants to do first, second, and third. I don't want to be accused of favorites.
Beauty. There you go.
Wow.
There you go.
I'll stay away from that.
Already started.
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the department, how we do things, how we're organized, and then get into the budget. So the Carver EMS department is an advanced life support ambulance service operating 2 Class 1 advanced life support ambulances from its quarters directly behind the town hall. The system avoids the expense of full-time personnel by utilizing paramedics and EMTs on a call and per diem basis. With this staffing model, we are able to accomplish full-time staffing without full-time personnel, which minimizes our salary cost and avoids creating any health insurance cost or fringe benefit costs for the town. This system also minimizes the ever-increasing annual training cost, which is required by the Office of Emergency Medical Services. And I'm pleased to report that the EMS system and its personnel are performing very effectively. We've been fortunate to be able to add to and maintain our excellent EMT and paramedic staff, and currently have 45 highly trained EMS personnel, 26 EMTs, and 19 paramedics. And I am confident that the medical teams that respond to medical emergencies in Carver are among the best in the area. Our extensive internal quality assurance program that is required by the Office of Emergency Medical Services and our director, Dr. Tenerowitz of the Beth Israel Deaconess Plymouth Hospital, and oversight by the Hospital Patient Care Quality Review System in accordance with our affiliation agreement, bear out that the quality of advanced life support care being provided by Carver EMS is of the highest quality and in compliance with all state and regional treatment protocols. Carver EMS continues to provide excellent and timely care at the highest pre-hospital level. I feel we can be very proud of both our system and its personnel, and with this staffing model, we are able to provide exceptional care and do it on a self-supporting basis. Carver EMS continues to bring in more revenue each year than it expends, and receipts go into the ambulance fund, which is a fund created by special legislation and essentially serves as a general treasury type account for the exclusive use of the ambulance service. The budget for the ambulance service transfers from the ambulance fund account to the ambulance salary and operating accounts, and are actually allocating those monies which have already been collected by the ambulance service. Actual receipts for fiscal year 2018, the year that ended last June 30, were $717,737.69, and expenditures from the salary and operating account total $669,961.42, which resulted in receipts exceeding expenditures by $47,776.27. Carver Ambulance responded to 1,641 calls in fiscal year 2018, which was a 9% increase over fiscal year 2017. and we transported 1,251 patients, which was 123 more than fiscal year 2017, which resulted in revenues being $14,074.74 more than they were in fiscal year 2017. Now, 123 additional patients should result in more than a $14,000 increase in your revenue. So we looked at the reasons for that. We found that, first of all, we hadn't really addressed our rates in 6 years. And also, and the biggest part of it was that when we last addressed the rates in 2012, the Medicare and Medicaid population, or the number of our percentage of our patients that had Medicare and Medicaid was 63%. And by 2018, it had increased to 76%. No one pays less than the government, and so that was the impact. So I went to the Board of Selectmen, and in August they did increase the rates to Medicare plus 200%, up from Medicare plus 225%, which other towns in the area had already done. So my budget this year is a level services budget, which provides primarily for an EMS crew of 1 paramedic and either 1 or 2 EMTs on duty 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with at least one of the EMS crews standing by at the station providing for an immediate response of our primary duty ambulance to medical emergencies. The budget request includes a 3% increase in the salary account to provide for personnel raises if approved by town meeting and the Board of Selectmen, and a 5% increase in the operating account due to the cost of medical supplies increasing at a rate that exceeds inflation and anticipation of increased call volume. The salary budget also includes funds to provide for the flexibility to increase staffing on shifts which history has shown to be busy shifts where in-town personnel there may not be a lot of in-town personnel, so we can up our staff a little bit to cover second calls more effectively, and that has worked very well. The ambulance fund is in sound financial condition with a starting balance in FY 2009 of $214,363.06, which is after we had taken $220,000 for our newest ambulance, which was delivered last February, and for the FY 2019 budget. So I'll take whatever questions you have.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Mr. Walsh is sometimes very modest in what he talks about, and a couple things that I want to point out is that the organization that he runs with his personnel, and it's a team effort, is by far the most respected group in the area. And what I mean by that is, again, as he said, there's no full-time personnel. But we have a waiting list, or have had a waiting list at times, for people wanting to join our group. And again, these are all full-time paramedics at other facilities, and they want to get some extra hours in. And they deliberately focus on Carver because of how well the organization is run with Tom and his people to put that together. Not to mention, we make sure that they have all the appropriate equipment to do that. So the level of protection that this community has with having 2 ALS ambulance units available, in essence 24/7, with always at least 1 full-time crew on staff is phenomenal. And again, he's doing this without any taxpayer funds. The last point I want to make is it's also one of the most dynamic departments. Tom, as Meg knows, watches every penny, and when something changes, Tom's trying to figure out why. And when he figures out why, then he goes back and makes a change to accommodate that. So, you know, as he talked about changing some staffing levels where they were having some challenges, he made dynamic changes within the organization to make sure that they're always state of the art. And although he won't say all this, I wanted to because, you know, for those that aren't familiar with it, it is a phenomenally run organization.
I would just mention, thank you, Michael, for those comments, but I don't do this all by myself. I have 2 deputies who are terrific at doing their jobs, doing quality assurance and doing administrative work, as well as an operation officer who oversees our training area. So it's a team effort that makes it work.
It seems to be the common denominator among everybody in public safety in this town. The police department that recognizes they're not a one-man band. The fire department that certainly works as a as a group, and then your department. I didn't get it written down. How many calls did you take last year?
He took my notes.
1,641.
1,621, I believe. Yep. Yeah, 1,641 calls, which resulted in 1,251 transports.
So 10% of the population of the town is what it boils down to in the course of a year. That's a considerable number.
We're busier than a lot of other towns our size, primarily because of elderly mobile home parks.
Well, I appreciate the job you do. Anybody else on the committee have something?
So do you have all ALSs, no BLSs?
We have we work a PB system with a paramedic and a basic EMT on duty at all times. Okay. So we have BLS calls. I mean,
but you use an ALS ambulance? I'm just wondering.
We always use an ALS ambulance, yes. Our ambulances have to be staffed at the ALS level.
They do, okay.
But you can take a BLS call in an ALS ambulance, but you can't take an ALS call in a BLS ambulance.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yes, just wondering.
Meg, did you have anything you wanted to toss in there on this?
I do not.
Tom, is Tom's budget ever off by a penny?
Nope.
And I just had one other question. Is 5% enough for, you said supplies, you were increasing the budget 5%? Is that too conservative?
I think so. Yeah, I think the budget right now is working pretty good. We have some things coming up next year. I don't know whether it'll be in this fiscal year or the next fiscal year. We have to replace all our computers in the building. John Neely could tell me why. Something about that it's not going to be maintained after the end of the calendar year of 2019. So we are going to be spending some expenses there. No, I think we're good.
And,
I'm
sorry, quick question. What would the Meg, the estimated receipts for 2020? Do we have that for you in this month?
I don't have that with me.
What?
I don't have that with me. I can get back to you though.
I must have it someplace else. I didn't bring it with me tonight.
Is it the 783, 375?
That's the cost. Do you remember off the top of your head what the?
I don't think I estimated the receipts.
No, I thought.
Okay.
It's on the last page.
As part of the budget process, I don't think I estimated the receipts. I would estimate them though, but I have been looking at them, and I do think it'll come in at around 780,
Okay.
which will be up from 714 last year.
Gotcha.
Because of the rate increase, primarily because we actually have done a few less calls this year.
And I should know this, but maybe a silly question. Do you cover multiple towns or just Carver?
Cover the town of Carver. We have mutual aid agreements with all neighboring towns.
So
as
you
well.
can go to the per the mutual aid agreement. You can go to.
Oh yeah, we go to all the towns in the area.
You know, not tonight, but do you have numbers on how many calls you go on the other towns?
I don't have those numbers right now, but I would say it's less than 5%.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
But you handle most of our calls.
Yes, we handle roughly 90% of our second calls as well. You know, you can staff one ambulance, but you really can't afford to staff the second ambulance with the crew that's sitting there. So you're calling on in-town personnel, who, you know, paramedics and EMTs, to come and answer those calls that come in while that primary ambulance is tied up. And we handle about 90% of those ourselves without the need for mutual aid.
I think that's important too, is we end up, Tom and his team end up going to other towns more than we have aid coming into our towns. Yeah. So we actually have more influx of revenue because we can build those out as well. Would you take a minute and just kind of talk about town-wide defibrillators and some of the issues we're going through for that? Just real quick.
Okay. Michael's referring to public access AEDs, and there was a public access AED, or an AED, that was down the Council on Aging, which became obsolete. And he asked me to oversee a program of 4 AEDs, one at the Council on Aging, one in the Town Hall, one in the library, and one down the DPW facility. So the first thing I did, if you look at the laws, you have to have a doctor standing behind the program, medical control. So I reached out to Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital, and after 3 or 4 months of lots of different starts and stops, they decided that they would not give us medical control for public access AEDs. They will give us medical control for police and fire department AEDs, and they've done so. But they will not give us medical control for public access AEDs because there's a, if you read the law, Massachusetts has written a very kind of stringent law about medical control, and they feel that there's a liability there for a public access AED where someone, again, may be untrained, might use it. And there's no way in a public access situation that you can guarantee that it's going to be a trained person, even though you would offer training in these areas. So since they turned it down, they even went to the extent of revoking their medical control for the schools. And so the schools are also searching now for some doctor who will stand behind their program. And I reached out directly to the medical director because he's really not an employee of Beth Israel Deaconess the way these doctors work. And he won't take it because of possible liability and malpractice. Didn't think his malpractice insurance would cover it if some horrible incident, you know, happens and then someone decides to sue. I've reached out to another doctor who said he would do it, but didn't really know the laws and asked me to send him a copy of the law, and I did, and I haven't heard back from him in a week, but maybe we will get medical control there. But so we're trying to do this, but we can't do it without medical control. And the hospitals, of course, when you get the lawyers involved and they approach everything from the, you know, the being the most risk adverse as possible, they just saw a risk with public access AEDs and with school AEDs. So we may or may not. I came and got $10,000 from this committee to set up that.
I thought we did a transfer.
And none of it's been spent. And I'm trying to find a doctor so we can buy some of these.
What do the other towns do?
Well, that's an interesting question. It appears that a lot of them might just be ignoring the law. I don't know if I don't know that, but I've asked that question. I have other people asking, and no one really knows.
So at this point in time, am I correct in what you're saying? They are not installed?
No, they haven't been purchased.
If they were to be installed and there's no doctor behind them and John uses it on me because I have a heart attack, there's liability involved?
Well, all I can say is that if you were to do that, you would not be within the confines of the AED law. And whether that would come back to haunt you or not, I don't know. But
this is now ongoing with the schools also?
As of a week ago, the school physician had declined to take on that role as well because he didn't feel he really qualified for it, because it has to be a cardiologist or someone working in the immediate area or in an emergency room or something like that. So.
And the school is required to have extras compared to what they had before for the outside fields and everything.
Well, I thought we had extra ones, and we also had some, correct me if I'm wrong, because the school has sections that can be locked off, so there needed to be, if it was one was accessible in this wing, but there were doors that could be locked, then we had to put one in this wing because you couldn't get to the one in that wing.
Yeah, they purchased 9, and they've been installed, and now they're searching for medical control, as are we. So where that's going to go, and it's at a point where I should put in a budget for next year for that, but unless we can come up with medical control, at least under my direction, there won't be any.
What are our chances of approaching like Toby Hospital?
That's a possibility. I haven't.
A little bit less.
I haven't got to that.
Corporate structured than Beth Israel.
Well, they're part of South Coast, so there's plenty of corporate structure at South Coast, but that's a possibility as well. And I was about to do that when this doctor from Brockton, Dr. Muse, reached out to us through talking with Chief Dufilly, who's going to get his Narcan approval from Dr. Muse, and he said he'd do it. But I haven't heard from him in a week, but I'll be following up with that. So we're trying to find medical control, but that's where it stands.
Do you want to add to that conversation? Beth is our newest member of the board, and she comes with experience as the finance director for South Shore Hospital.
problem.
Okay.
So
You got any connections there with the doctor?
I was just gonna say that I didn't know that I wanted to suggest that, but I certainly have no problem with you asking that
Yeah, I
question.
mean, if you've
Well,
got
I
a
can-
name, send me an email.
I can get you in touch with the director of the EMS service there and tell you, I know that we just redid all the ones in the town of Weymouth, so.
Okay, it'd be interesting to see if someone there would be interested in giving us medical control for a public access AED. Everyone's comfortable doing it for police and fire.
Yeah.
And EMS, we get it through our affiliation agreement. And those agreements require that they be trained annually and that only trained personnel use the AED. Everyone's comfortable with that. But when you start saying you're going to hang it on the wall, even though you're going to train, maybe I'll train people in this building.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean those people are going to be there when
That's
it's
not-
needed, and I think that's where they're getting nervous.
Yeah, I can look into it for you. It's probably a little bit different because we own our own ambulance service.
Oh, right,
And
yes,
then
and so sure it
we
does.
won the bid on the town of Weymouth, and so we bought them out from Fallon. But I can get you some
Any help, I'd
information.
appreciate it.
Sure, definitely. I can get you in touch with some people too.
See how easy that is? Thank you. Do we address this individually tonight, all the three separates, or are we doing this as a package deal?
Well, if you have any questions, do it individually.
I'd entertain any other questions from the board? I think I'd entertain a motion for this portion of the budget, and this is simply an approval to recommend to the selectmen, am I correct?
Right, you're just you're reviewing what the request was from the department, and then you have the town administrator's request to make a balanced budget, and unless you're looking to change any of those numbers, you're there recommending that go forward to the Board of Selectmen.
I would entertain that motion. Anyone?
Second it?
I can't second it. I can't make the motion, so I need to entertain the motion to begin with. You can second it as soon as John makes it. Apparently, the two ladies don't want to.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the ambulance budget in accordance with the, I guess you've got the town administrator and selectmen have agreed with what's been requested by the department, and for that we recommend approving this budget and passing that recommendation along to the selectmen.
And it's 783,375.01, bottom page 1.
Yep.
I'm good.
Thanks, John.
Discussion?
Yeah. Mr. Duggan seconded. I'm just trying to find the number. I want to make sure I have the number. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed?
I'm abstaining.
And we have one abstention. So we have 401. And Kate is abstaining because her husband is on the EMS, is an EMS member. So
Your husband makes all this happen.
that's right.
He oversees it all. Tom's just a figurehead. he's the pretty face of it all.
Yeah, Tom's just there for the looks.
Thank you, Tom.
Nothing, Tom.
Kate said she thought you were hot.
Alan, we're going to take it HR.
And televised.
Hey. Brooke Monroe said that if we had a site inspection after 10 a.m. on a Saturday, we could have cocktails. When we were doing the site inspection at the condos on the pond on the other side. So I made that announcement, and 3 or 4 of the ladies said, "Oh, I'll make drinks." Next up
Who's going next?
is either fire or up. Chief, we have police. Evening, Chief.
Good evening, thank you.
How are you?
Good, how are you, sir?
I'm well.
And the committee?
Always good to see you.
Same here. So before we get into the budget, I would like to do like Tom did and talk to you a little bit about what we've done in the past year. And I'll start off with saying I'm always impressed that Tom is able to do what he is able to do without expending any taxpayer money. And unfortunately, I can't tell you the same, but I can tell you that every dollar we spend for you is spent wisely and helps to provide law enforcement services to town. So a little bit about what we've done this year, the past year. During 2018, the Carver Police Department logged 16,961 calls for service. That's up a little over 2,000 calls from 2017.
16,000, I'm sorry?
16,961.
That's more than last year, right?
About 2,000 calls more than last year, yes. About 46 calls per day, handled by 15 police officers, 4 dispatchers, and a part-time records clerk. That leaves me out and my admin assistant. A partial breakdown of those calls includes dealing with 124 domestic disturbances, serving 130 restraining orders or harassment orders, conducting investigations that led to the 3 arrests for narcotics violations, handling 269 vehicle crashes, affecting almost 1,400 motor vehicle stops for traffic violations, checking on 306 burglar alarms, conducting background investigations related to 357 licensed to carry firearms, and completing 784 requests for records. As Tom mentioned, we worked with our public safety partners, the fire department and EMS, to assist in slightly over 1,500 calls. We go to almost all the ambulance calls and fire calls. Our SRO, school resource officer, and other officers worked with the school department to ensure the safety of and to help educate our young people. We ran our 5th Junior Police Explorers program, which allows some of our young people to experience what police officers do on a daily basis. Additionally, the police union was instrumental in running our 5th Carver Night Out, along with help from fire and EMS. Our partnership with the Plymouth County Outreach Project continues to provide follow-up after an overdose with an offer of immediate acceptance into a treatment program for somebody who's had experienced an overdose. This program offers one more approach in our fight against drugs, which also includes our investigative efforts to arrest those dealing drugs and educational efforts to guide our youth into making good life choices. And again, this year we responded to fewer overdoses than the previous, with less loss of life. As requested, I've submitted a level service budget for FY20. This budget includes all contractual increases, but does not increase staffing levels this year. We're hopeful that may happen next year. On the operations side of the budget, there were a couple of increases you'll notice. Under other purchase services, there's an increase of $2,500 to help cover automated service that we've purchased to call out details and overtime and to help with the billing. That service, as recommended by MRI back in December, will help us to free up sworn officer time from calling, sitting in the station and actually making phone calls to fill details and fill overtime, to be in an automated service system where we can punch it into a computer. It automatically calls out and the officers can respond back. That'll save a lot of time, like I said, for sworn officers that gets wasted sitting in the station. So there is a cost to running that next year. That's added to our other purchase services. We've increased the telephone line by $500 to cover increases in telephone, but I've also worked with Verizon to try to cut that bill back, so we'll see. We may not need that whole $13,500 this year, but we'll see how those changes work out. And then there's a slight increase to uniforms and uniform allowance. That was originally we thought we might be putting in for 17th officer. We need that, but additionally, we, separate from the uniform allowance, we have to pay for patches and the work that goes to put those on. So we need to build that up a little bit to have to be able to handle those costs as they've expanded over the years. We've kind of kept that steady over the years, but that cost keeps going up. And that's the adjusted changes up. We are in contract negotiations now with the police union, so that these numbers may change if that, depending on a negotiated contract, but we can't put that in right now. We'd have to come back to that later on. The responsibility of preparing and expending the budget for our police department is one of my most important tasks. I take that responsibility very seriously, as evidenced by the past 5 fiscal years. I believe that we're spending taxpayer dollars on everything we do, and we should make sure that we spend them very wisely. Finally, let me thank you again for your support and trust as your police chief, and allow me to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work of our officers, public safety dispatchers, the firefighters, EMS personnel, DPW, and everyone else out there who helps to keep our town safe day in and out. And if you have any questions on the budget, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Chief, would you just let everybody know the number of officers you have at each position?
I'm sorry?
The number of personnel you have at each position.
From sergeants and patrolmen?
Yeah.
So we're currently staffed at 15. Well, we're down to 14 right now because Sergeant O'Donnell just retired, but we have 2 officers that are in the academy that will be graduating in March. From that, we have 4 sergeants. One is the administrative sergeant. That's a second in command. and then we have a patrol sergeant assigned to each of the day shift, the 4 to 12 shift, and the midnight day shift. And from there, we have the 10 police officers below them. One is assigned as a court officer detective, and one is assigned as the SRO currently.
And you also do animal control?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. We also take care of animal control. So our budget, our operating supplies are up to, well, no, that was a couple years ago, but yes, that is part of what we do. You'll see those salaries on this line too. All of those, again, are increased only by contractual or the wage and personnel chart.
Was there no money in the budget this year to move up to a deputy chief or add another officer? Because I know you're understaffed. Was there no funding for that, or did we?
So we're currently still in negotiations with the union about those issues, and as we resolve that, we will have to make adjustments to what we need if those come through. The budget is prepared to have a slight increase if we are able to negotiate those positions and make some changes. We're talking about some organizational changes to the department, including a deputy chief and the creation of a detective division, or detective sergeant and a detective. That's something that the department's been lacking for since I got here in 2002, and there is definitely, in my estimation, a need for that ability. We have very good police officers who do an excellent job responding to calls and document what we see, but we need to have the next step to be able to follow up, have some more follow-up that goes along with some of these calls.
Thank you. I'm very interested in if you had carte blanche, where would you like the department to be staffed at right now? Not next year, not 2 years, not down the road, right now. If you could have it any way you wanted it, give me a number.
Well, it's an excellent question, and I believe that the number that we want to get to is 20. But I have to say that we're not, we have to continue to build that slowly as we've been, and bringing two new officers on at a time is about the max that we can do for the field training that needs to go on and getting them up to speed. So if we tried to increase from the 16 to 20 right away, it would be too much of a burden for the current officers that are here to work with new officers and train them. So we've been doing a pretty successful job. We've hired, since I took over, 9 police officers. We've hired 6 brand new and sent them to the academy off the civil service list. We've hired 3 lateral transfers. By doing that, that allows us to get to balance new people, new residents from Carver that don't have the experience with some people who have some experience, because having that balance is what keeps a police department balanced, which doesn't leave you. If we had a police department that was all new police officers, nothing wrong with that. But when you're a new police officer, you're a lot more gung-ho, you're a lot more eager to get out there, but you also don't have that experience that tempers that. So we've tried to balance that. I think we've done an excellent job over the past few years, and I believe that if we continue on that path to work within the finances of town, hiring 1 or 2 as we go, I believe that that's the best way to do it. So it's a long round answer. I think 20 would be the number we'd want to be staffed at, but I don't believe that if we had enough money to hire 4 right now that I would hire 4 right now. You
said that before, that you didn't want to, you'd rather do it in smaller doses.
Now that being said, we still have to think about the future, and the future is 2025. Many of our command staff and many of our other officers will reach retirement age in the police field. Not that they have to, but they may, and we have to consider that as we move forward to make sure that we brought people in staggered in an approach so that they have the experience needed to take over and run the police department successfully when that experience leaves. And I believe we've planned that very, very well, and we'll continue to plan that as we go.
I want that to become a priority in the town. I really do. I want us to have a class. We have a class police department, but I want us to have a fully staffed that makes the officers happy and is run at a point that makes you comfortable and makes you secure in knowing that you can do your job for this town and you have enough people behind you to be able to do it with you. So that's a big deal to me. Public safety is a huge deal to me. And so that's why I asked that question. Anybody else on the board have anything they want to ask?
Alan, if I could just jump in there too and just expand upon what the chief mentioned, is that we also knew that this year, for the last 18 months, there were a bunch of retirements that were going to be happening. So, you know, you have to take that into account as to how many people, as he said, you can train at a particular time. So it provided the opportunity of bringing on 4 or 5 new officers in the last 24 months, I think, is what it's pulled down to. Is it 4 or 5?
6 all total.
6.
But since 2015, though, it's over the last 3 years, so 36 months.
So that's a big burden right there from going through the whole training process that's there. The second piece is that, you know, being a small town is that we have to figure out, you know, once we get past the contractual step raises, we're in this whole pay-go system. So if we're going to pay for something, we got to have something else go, or you got to cut something
Right.
else. So although we may want to have a bunch of things here, it's always trying to figure out, okay, what is more important, or what can be cut. And, you know, particularly this year, I think what the focus is, as we've mentioned before in the budget, was that with all of the new buildings coming online, and as you heard back in, I think it was November, there's 6 DPW workers working on the town. So that's why that department, O&M, became the focus this year to put those in there. But having said that, the chief and I have spoken, and you know, next year is going to be a focus on trying to add a person or so to the police department. Keep in mind, there's only so much money, new money that comes into town
Right.
every year. So we got to balance that whole thing that's out there.
Please don't misunderstand. I'm not finding any fault with the way this is done at all. I just want it out there that there is an objective to increase the size of the department. There's no doubt in my mind that, and for everybody doesn't know, that the balancing act that goes into the budget is difficult at best. It's no different with your own home budget. If you go out of control with your home budget, you got to cut somewhere. When you, in order to make these numbers work, then there's a give and a take. So if we're going to put something in, we're going to buy something, then something's got to suffer from it. Suffer is probably a bad word, but you take away from the other side in order to make the numbers work, and I'm well aware of that. And I'm not finding any fault with any other money we're spending somewhere else, a suggestion that we, you know, we just don't pay Craig Weston for a little while in order to do something different. Just decided to pick on you tonight for no reason. But I think that the town needs to know that we are leaning toward trying to get the police department a staff increase, because this does get, I see it every day now. I see the traffic increase in the town. I see the number of calls, which is up from last year. I sit at the end of Rochester Road in the morning. I happened to be late one morning, and it took me 10 minutes to get out of the end of the street. It's like, where are these cars all coming from? And then, you know, you increase in the summertime with the traffic from Edaville, in the summertime with the traffic from King Richard's Fair. And I think you guys are kept pretty busy. So that's the objective, is to let everyone know that this is something we're looking at coming down the road. I can't thank you enough for the way you run the department. I think it's run incredibly well. I think all the departments in this town are run incredibly well for the resources they have.
Thank you, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about the capital requests for this year?
So this year's capital request is just one cruiser.
Just the cruiser?
Just the cruiser.
We talked a while back about some of the problems we have with being able to police the bogs and, you know, four-wheel drive vehicles, or I think at one point you mentioned drones. Is that something you're...
Yes, I'm not able to speak to you about drones tonight because it's not. We've decided public safety wise, and we'll let the fire chief talk about that since he's taken the lead on it.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't know much about drones. Mike Shaw, my dispatcher, knows a lot about it. Yes, and we don't have an SUV vehicle to go on the. I mean, a bog vehicle to go on the bogs. Fire's always volunteered to let us do that, but we don't have anything to patrol the bogs yet. We're always watching, as we've done with some of the admin cruises, to buy stuff that's repurposed or used from other departments, and we've done that with the tractor company that's up north. We're keeping an eye on anything that might come in from them that we could purchase at a different rate. But I don't have that in there right now because we just don't. We need to have the bodies to be able to put people out on the road, and we haven't had that yet. We will get that. We'll get up to 16 this year, so potentially the following year we could be looking towards something like that. But I just don't have I've got to keep 2 guys on the road, so it's hard to put them out in bog roads and stuff. So
We ever do the motorcycle?
we're still working on that. We had some money at last year's town meeting to be able to purchase a used motorcycle,
Yeah.
and that deal with Hingham fell through. But we've worked a deal with Middleborough that should be coming through this spring to purchase a used motorcycle.
Cool.
You mentioned the pond. What'd you do for Sampson's Pond?
So we still have the police boat, and we put that out as we can based on the overtime budget in the summer on the weekends, with 2 officers in it to slow people down, to slow the jet ski traffic down, and to deal with the influx from some of the other cities and towns that come to use our beaches. And We got Mr. O'Brien called us on the carpet at the selectmen's meeting about only issuing not enough parking tickets, but the really place to issue tickets in town is at the beaches, and that does happen in the summer months. But he'd like to see more parking tickets from us, but we don't have a lot of no parking zones that we actually go issue parking tickets at. So. But that is part of what the boat patrol does.
And you say you're negotiating the police contract still?
That's correct. We've just begun with the police department.
And is that for, what's the timing on that? Is it for next year, or is it are we or a year or two behind?
The current contract expires on June 30th of 2019, so it would take effect July 1.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We have an anticipated increase, any idea?
I don't at this time.
We don't discuss that.
Sorry.
Chief, what are your thoughts on combining fire dispatch and police dispatch? Because I know your dispatchers are already covering it at nights.
So currently dispatch is covered by both departments, with the public safety dispatch is in my building, which covers police, fire, and EMS. During the day there's a fire dispatcher, and on weekends as well. So it really is already combined. Are you talking about the facilities, or?
Yeah, I mean, I know we have the beautiful dispatch center across the street at the fire station, so just. So
I think that one of the excellent things we have about public safety in Carver is a little bit of redundancy. We all work well. The three chiefs work very well in providing public safety, and having those two dispatch centers has definitely increased our ability to handle large storms and such. And I think that we should maintain those. I think there's an expense to doing to building that, but once it's up and there, I think it's extremely valuable to have, especially when we have power down, trees falling down. We've increased by getting away from two-wheel drive cruisers and having the SUVs. We're able to bring more officers into work during a storm, and by having those two dispatch centers, we're able to have a lot of what needs to go on happen in both of them simultaneously. And the other thing that provides us is a great backup to. We had a problem recently with the backup generator at the police department. If that backup generator doesn't work, we're out. We have nothing but a quick call to the fire chief, and we can move over there. We can transfer 911 to Duxbury, and we can keep going without a glitch. Not a lot of places have that. So I think the initial expense of getting those up, having two dispatches up, there's money to be put into that, but I think it's very well spent because it keeps us up and running in an emergency without any problems. And
how about the regional centers that they have around here, like the Rock?
So my experience and what I've heard from other police chiefs is they sound great at the start, and Halifax has gone to it, Plimpton's gone to it, Rochester's the most recent one, and they bring you in with a, there's going to be no future costs, it's going to be great. We currently spend, this year's budget is $300,000 for public safety dispatch. From Halifax's standpoint, when they went over there, it started at, okay, we're going to bring you in for nothing, we're going to buy you new radios. And then when they said, okay, we'll sign into that, it went, well, it's really going to cost you $300,000 this year, and then the assessment's going to go up and up and up from there. So the money, I don't think you're going to see a great savings in money by doing that. And what I do think you do is you lose the local control on that. So an example is Halifax, their servers go to Duxbury, where the fire station is, and nothing against that, but when their server locks up and it needs to be physically reset and nobody from the Rock can do it, the Halifax PD can't do a police report, can't complete an arrest report. So you lose that kind of interaction. We keep that right in our building. When the building we've designed has dispatch and the IT room connected, and that's part of what the program is today. Mike Shaw is our day dispatcher, and he also helps out with the computer stuff, but by having that right there, Mike Shaw can leave his seat and fix something and keep us going, where that doesn't occur over there. And they're always working on it, they're always improving, and I think they're doing an excellent job over there, but I believe for our town, we're much better off to maintain what we do have. What we would lose from the police department is we would have a dark station. So if there's no dispatcher in the police station, there's no, the police station is truly the only one that's occupied 24/7. EMS is as well, but when they're on a call, nobody's in that station. So if you drove over there and said you need an ambulance, there might not be somebody there. There's always somebody in police. And for us we have to maintain at least one public safety place that's open 24/7. For us to do that with a full-time police officer, we're going to incur that expense plus the assessment from the Rock. I think that we're doing it as efficiently as we can, and I think that it's for the time being something we should definitely maintain. It keeps local control here with us. So when you call 911 and you say that I've been involved in a car accident at Story's Corner, somebody in Duxbury might go, what's that? But our dispatchers know what that is because the training process goes through an extensive training about the roads and get them out there to see the roads and understand what the town is physically. So I believe for the money we spend, we're wise to remain in what we're doing now. I hope that answers your question. I don't know where you were looking, but that's my opinion on it. And I can't speak for Tom or Craig, but I believe they'll support the same thing.
Just the number 20 officers. Just curious what the criteria is for that number. Or was it population or?
So there's
a lot of seniors in town. I didn't know whether crime was up with it.
So if you go back to the MRI study back in December, there are many ways to figure out what the number is for the police officers you need. Some people will always throw out, well, there's an FBI standard of this many numbers per this 1,000 people, and that's a way to do it. But a better way to do it is to look at what your calls for service are, and figure that out to how many calls per officer per year do you handle. And we want to maintain a call ratio of about 700 to 725 calls per year per officer. To do that, we need to continually increase. As I said, this year our calls went up by 2,000, and our calls will continue. Our call volume will continue to expand, even though our population is not going up, because society has changed. From when I started this job, what the police did was very well defined, and we went and stopped bar fights, and we went and stopped bad guys, and it was very well defined. And it's changed over the years. Our role in the opioid epidemic, take away the criminal investigation side of it, but just going out to these to people who've had overdoses afterwards and help getting them into some type of help, that's a service that wasn't provided in 1995 or in 2000. That's increased, and that continues to change. People call the police for more and more things, and if you came over and listened to our calls, you'd be shocked by some of the things people call the police for. But we respond to them. We deal with them the best we can. We are, again, here 24/7. So if something happens to your house, our officers have crawled into houses to shut water off when pipes are broken. Helped, I remember we were at one with a little lady with her refrigerator was overheating and didn't know who to call to get it repaired. So we were able to sit with her and get it. So there's a lot of things that we do today in police work that we didn't do 10 or 15 years ago, and I don't think that's going to change. I don't think that's going to, not from what I'm reading, it's going to continue to expand because everything seems to fall on public safety and in itself police work. So to maintain that 720 or 725, and I don't remember, don't quote me on the number because it's in the report and I don't exactly remember it off the top of my head, but it's around there that we want to maintain as our call volume. We're going to have to be looking to get to that at some point.
And Chief, that report is online, I believe.
Yes, it is. It's actually attached to the police building advisory committee, if you want to.
It's more the calls coming in as opposed to population.
Yes, I mean it is definitely part of the population is what we need too, but it's really to deal with what we do actually have for calls, what we're doing for work, and what we need an officer to do that. And then that calculation counts into vacation time and time in the court. I mean, there's a lot of things that police officers do besides just going to a call. So those numbers, to keep those numbers at an acceptable level for the town of Carver, which we believe we have because we're not getting complaints that we're not getting to calls. To maintain that, we need a certain number of officers to do that, and that will continue to increase as our call numbers increase.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I would entertain a motion to accept the police operating budget and forward it to the Board of Selectmen for the town warrant.
Make the motion to accept the police operating and salary budget and dispatcher salaries and animal control to the selectmen.
I second that.
In the amount of?
Give the amount.
The $1,817,962.
Just a combined number.
Just 2 million at the bottom line. Yeah, make it easy with yourself. Just 2 million.
The $2,545,858.95.
Is it
Yep.
2,286,000?
2,286,000.
He pointed at the wrong one then.
I did 2286. I apologize. 2286-04925.
Yes.
Geez, nice try out and try to get 4 new positions there. Chief was
Doing
just
what I
looking at me,
can
he's like,
for you, Chief.
I can't train him fast enough.
You notice I didn't say anything, right?
Does there need to be any adjustment, or will that just automatically happen because that's contractual?
What's that?
This is the number, and I understand we're dealing with negotiations on the contract for the union. So but that's contractual, so that won't have another effect on us anyway, right?
No, not at this point. We may have to come back for some supplemental money in future years, but again, we've got a long way to go to negotiate the contract, so
Okay.
it's not going to be finalized and signed most likely before town meeting.
Okay.
We'd like it to be, but they always take longer than we anticipate.
Okay. So that motion is made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Carried unanimous.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Chief. Thank you very much for all your hard work.
And now you get the smallest public safety.
And last, but certainly not least,
Last and smallest.
now see, he picks on me for HR, and he just called you the smallest. Is that a reference to your?
Smallest, but it does take taxpayer money.
Is that a reference to your height?
Thank you.
Hey, Mark,
Yes.
we get pamphlets from the fire department.
Last but certainly not least.
So it begins.
All right, is there a motion?
That'd be perfect. First of all, my name is Craig Weston. I'm your fire chief, and I know there's some new members on the board. And first of all, I want to start by thanking you for your service and the support you've always given your public safety departments. So what I did is we try to obviously be as transparent as we can and give you as much information as we can. So the booklet that you have, I'm not going to go through it. Don't worry. I know I'm under a time limit, or I'll start getting some sighs from the back of the audience. So I'm going to go through the beginning part of it, but it's basically for you to take home and understand where the fire department funds are going and some of our capital requests and where they are in the future. So before I get into that, I really want to, you have a unique system in the town of Carver. You have 3 public safety departments that work seamlessly together. And you know, the 2 gentlemen behind me, Chief Walsh and Chief Dufilly, you know, they do a tremendous job for the town in running their organizations. And there's not many towns that you can go to where the 3 chiefs, they all tend to have type A personalities and all want to keep their territory the way it is, work as well as we do together, and our departments below us. So we're very fortunate to have that relationship. Each one of them has their own strengths, and it's just a pleasure to work with them and have, you know, common goals and protecting the people of this community. So you should really cherish that. That's not really the way it is everywhere. We work together when it comes to our budgets and public safety, you know, how we're going to make it work, and I'm just very proud of that. So I just want you guys to also be proud of that too. So so I'd like to just start out by a little bit of overview what we're doing in the fire department, and then how our budget is allocated, and then we'll go to some capital costs. So so the Carver Fire Department, we are functioning at a very high level. This year we promoted 6 new fire officers, and we hired 5 new call firefighters. We put in service a newly refurbished brush breaker. It was a 1991, and we had that done. And we're preparing for delivery of our updated PPE clothing, which we sat in front of this committee, and you graciously supported us with that. That will be arriving here, we're hoping mid-February. Pieces have already started to come in, and we're collecting it and assigning names to everything, but that process just takes a little while. In 2018, we averaged a 5.2-minute response time, and that's to emergencies within the town of Carver. That's an average, and that's with a fully staffed engine company. We consider a fully staffed engine company of at least 4 firefighters and an officer on that truck. So we're very proud of those numbers. We responded to a record 541 incidents last year. We do not respond with EMS or police unless requested, and obviously we go on those calls. We continue to have one of the lowest funded fire departments in the state of Massachusetts. Right now we figure we're about $54 per person depending on what you figure the population is, but we use 11,500. We're very proud of that number. We do not use that as a number that we're disappointed with. We think that represents what we strive to do to the community and save a lot of money. We have 20 firefighters right now taking high-level certifications exam with the department. They're going to be tested on Saturday. This time last year, we had over 30 firefighters completing that same process. And those range from firefighter 1, 2 to fire officer 1, fire officer 2, fire instructor, and hazmat technicians. This can not be accomplished without support of our officers, firefighters, our spouses. You know, we have a lot of people that back us, and you know, we recognize that. And above all, it can't be supported without the finance committee, the board, and certainly our town administrator. Last year, we had a 24% increase in calls for our department. So we watched that really carefully, and what's that going to do to the trends this year? There's not really a good way I can explain where those 24% came from. They were all over the board. We obviously had the March storms, which created a burden for everybody, but even without that, we still had a record number of calls that we responded to. So we submitted a level service budget, and basically that's a budget that we feel we need to keep the department going and stay progressive. So it came down to basically there was a $3,540 increase to our operating budget. So our operating budget this year is $94,640. That's up $3,540. There were two places that was increased. That was increased under IT. Basically what we do is we purchased this year. Last year during the storms, we had a lot of internet outages in our fire station, our dispatch center. So we purchased basically a Verizon router, an LTE router, and basically we have that functioning right now. So when Comcast goes down, our internet service will automatically kick over to an LTE cell tower and keep us up and running. That's probably the most secure way we can do it. And that's going to be an increase of about $500 and something a year. So smart money. We're putting it in effect right now. Right? Excuse me?
It's like a MOFI network?
Correct, yeah.
I had the same thing.
Yeah, same idea. It's a little more rugged and industrial for public safety use. So we're implementing that. We're also going to be implementing hose testing. We were fortunate enough, about 6 years ago, we got a grant for all new fire hoses and nozzles within the department. And so it's in really good shape. One of the things we recognize is that starts to need to be tested annually or every other year. And so there's departments around that sub that out to a company. They're very good at that, and they'll give you hose testing reports. Would like to institute that next year and start that either on an annual basis or an every other year process. So those are the two things that we're going to be increasing our operating budget for. And that $94,000, that covers all our vehicles, anything to do with repairs for 85 firefighters, our extensive radio networks, our 3 fire stations, our repeater sites. You know, that's a very frugal number for an operating account to run our whole infrastructure. So when we add an increase of $3,000 to originally $91,000, it looks like a large increase. It looks like a 4% or 5% increase. You have to understand what that's relative to. So just so you understand that. On the salary side of our budget, the fire chief's line item is increased by 2%, and that's per the contract. So there's nothing there. The full-time fire dispatcher, we have 1 full-time fire dispatcher, and we have 9 part-time fire dispatchers, have all gone up 1 step in their grade. So that comes out to basically a 2% following the wage and classification plan. And then our overtime budget, when you increase it by 2%, went up a whopping $273. So that's kind of how that works. Our firefighter salaries line item, which is our most unpredictable line item we have, and that's when you would probably see me come before you in the future, is we equate it to like the snowplow budget. We just don't know how many calls we're going to have a year. We don't know how long our officers and firefighters are going to be out on those calls. And so it can be very unpredictable. We try to be good at looking at 3-year averages and trends. So this year, noticing we had a 24% increase in calls, I increased that line item which used to be $154,000, by $5,000. I have presented a 2% step increase, so for all firefighters and officers. Right now, our firefighters make $17.50 an hour.
I'm sorry, how much?
$17.56 an hour. And there's no minimum, there's no 4-hour minimum, there's no overtime. It's basically you come for an hour, you get paid for an hour. So that would go up 2%. And then there is a factor put in by the Finance Department of a 1.0076. It's called a split factor based on there's extra paydays in the work year that increase the budget by that amount. So that total comes to a $9,391 increase in our firefighter salaries account. So you understand where that's going. And again, that number, I feel good about it, but I just don't know where I'll be this time next year, depending on storms. The other thing we have in our salary line items, just so I want to make you aware of, we have a deputy chief and assistant deputy chief in the department. The deputy chief is a grade C step 9. That'll be increased to a grade C step 10, so that's a standard 2%. What's unique is we have some very highly motivated personnel in our department, and especially our deputy chiefs. Right now, I'll just use Deputy Jermaine as an example. He's averaging about 580 hours over his normal work week. That goes unpaid, okay? No one's complaining. With that, we pay him, and we pay the same thing with our assistant deputy chief. We pay a $6,000 stipend to be on call. So they get a base pay, and they get a stipend to be on call for emergencies. That $6,000 stipend equals about 130 hours that they would get paid for. So we're paying for 130 hours even though we're working 580. And again, no one's complaining. So what I want to do is I'm increasing that to, instead of a $6,000 stipend, we're increasing that to basically $9,200 stipend, which adds about 80 more hours of actually getting paid for. And we're calculating that by a 10% rate times their base pay. And I think you may see that in the future within other public safety departments, is trying to come up with a figure that can be fair, okay? So we've increased that from $6,000 to $9,243. That's figured into their weekly pay, so it doesn't come out as actually a stipend. It's broken out through the whole year. So that will happen. The same thing with our assistant deputy chief. He receives a little smaller stipend, but that calculation is going to happen the same way. It'll be a 10% times their base pay, which basically was a $5,000 stipend will now become a $7,200 stipend. And again, that equates to about adding 80 hours that we're paying for. No overtime. There's no time and a half. No one's looking for that. We're just trying to be a little more fair. And at least I want to be able to feel pretty good that when I ask these people, as the deputies here tonight, to come to meetings and committee meetings and after-hour stuff and weekend training and all the things that go on that we do with our firefighters, because most of them are around during the weekends and nights, where we already work today. And so we have to be back and manage the things that go on at night. I can feel a little better that at least we're trying to get them in the place that we feel good about. So that's what that is as far as those items. The other thing we have is some capital equipment. We have met with the capital outlay, and it has been approved. This year we're going to be looking to replace our 30-year-old water tanker. We have one tanker in town. We had it refurbished in 2013 to the best we could, but it's 30 years old. And right now, we have no fire hydrants that are good for fire protection within the community, so we rely with the water that we carry in all our GPS-marked water supplies around the community, which we have 130 of them. What we're noticing with climate change, whatever you want to call it, the droughts are getting longer when we do have droughts, and it's having more of an effect. Our water supplies are filling up. They're actually, the sediment in them is creating a problem where they're not as deep, and they start to get overgrown. The freezing temperatures we're going to have in the next few days, if you look around, everything's frozen. Okay, we rely on those ponds. And, you know, we have special equipment. We have ice augers and so forth that we drill holes in the ice and we can take water out of ponds, but it gets difficult, especially when there's a foot or 2 feet of snow on them.
And you're trying to drill a hole while the house is burning.
Yep, our group is trying to do that.
Exactly.
It was always a vision of this community to have 2 water tankers in town, and we were trying to wait till when we could do that. So we're going to be asking town meeting to fund that. That's a $495,000 purchase. There's a committee that has been established or is being established in the department. All our vehicles are built via committees of our firefighters, so they all have a say. And about $40,000 to $45,000 of that money will be used to equip it, the vehicle. The plan will be to move our existing water tanker to the south station, and to keep the larger tanker, which is going to be a little is new and a little larger, to keep it in our central station, so that there'll be a water tanker within 5 miles of anywhere in the town. That'll increase our capacity to over about 11,000 gallons that responds on a structure fire with our apparatus. So that's what we're bringing with us on the road, never mind what we're going to take out of ponds and so forth. So that will make me sleep a little better at night. When we order that, it's a year wait, about a year to get that. So what we're talking to you tonight, we won't see till well over a year, because since town meeting is until, obviously, in June. I mean, we can't spend the funds till almost June. On that, I want to give a little props to our town planner, Stephen Cole. He has, with a dedicated group of volunteers, he has applied for and acquired a grant of over $196,000 to help our community study fire department water supplies. That's actively going on. We meet pretty regularly about that. And among other things they're looking at with how climate change is affecting things in the community, a big part of this grant is exploring future fire department water supplies, how we clean up the ones we have, how we dig them deeper, how we put proper signage on them. So it's something we take really serious, and we have the funding now to do that. So again, I want to give him some props for that. Also on our capital outlay, we're going to be resurfacing the frame on our heavy rescue truck. That truck is almost 11 years old. There is some surface rot starting to show on it. So we want to have that sandblasted and repainted. And it's estimated to be a little under $10,000, but we wanted to get it as a capital item, which is the $10,000 limit. And then finally, I have just an update on our budget. Our operating budget right now is close. But it looks like it's going to be okay for the year, unless we get a major breakdown, which can happen. We are hiring 5 additional call firefighters this year. Those are direct replacement of 5 that we are losing this year or have lost due to personnel issues, retirements, health reasons, and so forth. We are going to depend on a warrant article at town meeting for both police and fire. I believe the article is for $15,000. It's usually an article that's there every town meeting. Sometimes last year I think it was 20 or 25,000. And we use that article to share among the departments to help with our new hires, our physicals, any equipment we have to buy. So if it's split 50-50, it would be $750 for the fire department, and that would help us with those new hires. If that doesn't go through, then we have to take that money out of our operating accounts and find a way to do it. So that's one we kind of depend on. Our salary line item is good, but it will depend on these storms that are coming through, and it depends on the storms through the winter. If, as an example, we put firefighters, they sleep at our fire stations whenever we feel the weather warrants it. So I watch the wind, I watch the amount of snow. As of right now, we're not going to staff our stations in this upcoming storm, but that could change tomorrow afternoon. And when we do that, we put a certain staff at each station, and it costs us about $275 per hour to staff those stations, and that's not a lot of money, okay, at all. And no one's down there for the money to do that while they're doing it. They're down there because they want to protect the community. But that could chew up $4,000 or $5,000 for a significant storm, and that's a big deal when you only have so much in that firefighter line item. I don't worry about that. I protect the town first, and then we figure out how we're going to do that. So that's how I do it. And just lastly, I just want to thank you for your support. We're a unique system running an on-call fire department. We're now the largest on-call volunteer fire department in the state of Massachusetts. We're very proud of that, and it's our goal to keep that going, because we believe so immensely in it. So we can't do it without your support, and I certainly take any questions.
Same question to you.
Sure.
About dispatchers and combining,
Sure.
or possibly the regional.
Sure. So I'll first start out by saying the Rock, as they call it in Duxbury, is a fantastically run operation. Okay, I know the person who put that together, one of my personal friends, and they do it as good as anybody could. So I just want to say that. I'm a believer. We run unique systems in the town of Carver. We run an all on-call fire department. We run a self-supporting EMS department that uses per diem people, and we have a well-trained police department. I'm a believer in redundancy. I and my deputies, and I know the other public safety chiefs, we listen to our radios 24 hours a day. And there's things that happen that you will never know about. There are problems that happen with radio systems. There are issues that go on with calls that we hear right away. And we are all within 3 or 4 minutes of being here if we need to for any crisis that happens. So I'm a believer in redundancy. I'm a believer of keeping control in your own community because it works. In the fire department, we don't have an administrative assistant. Okay, we don't have a secretary. We use our fire dispatcher during the day for a dual role purpose when someone comes in the building, asks for permits, has a question, a million things, giving out burn permits. So we save that position. We're allowed to use that person as a second dispatcher during the day in conjunction with the police dispatcher who's doing police and fire. And they work seamlessly back together however the workload comes in. So we save that position right away. So I already feel that we do it as frugally as we ever could of any system that's designed. If we had a magic pot of money, you know, would we add more staff to that? Of course we would. But I think we do it as well as we can. So I believe in maintaining the redundancy of 2 centers. We've shown that we're very frugal at running that. The new police station, and certainly the police chief can chime in, that will have a dispatch center in it, and we'll run it the same way. And that'll be for the future. I don't know, yes, we have a dispatch center in the fire station, we're very proud of it. And we staff it up heavily during the storms. We might bring in a second dispatcher and certainly keep one there for 24 hours a day. I don't know where we're going in the next 20 years, but we built the capacity to make sure we could do it and control it ourselves. When all of a sudden you're intermingled with 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 other towns, you all of a sudden now are living by their rules and their procedures, and that's how they're going to train their dispatchers and how they do it. And it doesn't always work for you and our community. So we pay attention to those systems. I think they do a very good job with how they do it. A lot of times people move to those systems to save costs. Okay, it's not always about creating a better system for that particular community, but it saves costs. And I think we already proved that we do that as frugally as we can in the town of Carver. So I'm a big supporter of the way we do it.
Can I jump in there? Because although I agree with what the chiefs have said, I think just providing a different perspective may help as well. Prior to coming to Carver, I worked for a town, and we joined a regional dispatch. It was 4 communities, and we were the 4th community to go into it. Now, in those communities, these were all full-time police, full-time fire. The fire was also the EMS as well, so it was a combined fire with paramedics built into the system. And in that situation, and for that unique towns, how it's all put together, there was a couple years of growing pains in order to work out all the bugs, and it's become a fairly successful program. But there were some issues. But you had communities that were very similar, had the same type of organizational structure, and it was, again, moving apples to apples and oranges to oranges, because, again, all were full-time departments. In Carver here is that it's unique because, in essence, we have 3 departments. And in those 3 departments, I think just looking at the numbers that you have, you know, and I joked when the chief was coming up here of chief number 3 of the fire department, they do have the smallest budget, you know, $673,000 to run a department with about 80 men and women. Now, in the other towns, to run a fire department of similar size, you're looking at about a $2.5 million budget. And I need to emphasize that again. $673,000 compared to $2.5 million budget. And the numbers the chief said, just to quote properly, was at 5.2 minutes.
Correct.
That is 5.2 minutes is the response time. In these full-time departments, they're about 6 minutes. So, you know, there's something that's special that's happening here. And, you know, we had Tom in here, and again, I said Tom's a little modest and doesn't talk about his department, and none of these chiefs do. But with his department and able to do everything they're doing without costing the town money is unheard of as well. So when I came into the town kind of jaded, says, oh, regional dispatch, there's a lot of good things that happen with that. But I could not find a way to figure out how it could work in Carver. These gentlemen here convinced me, based upon everything you've heard tonight, that a regional dispatch just is not going to work in Carver when we have 3 independent departments and how they run, because they run really well. And I'm a big believer, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And it's really tough to find something to improve in what they're doing. Now again, if I was in another town, I would probably be having a different discussion with you. But in Carver, this is, I think, the discussion for these chiefs and how to move forward into the future. And yes, there may be some cost savings here and there. Yes, you may get some regional grant money. Yes, the state may go in that direction and it may be forced upon us. But for us to volunteer and go in that direction, I don't see Carver in that position for a while. Hope that helps.
Bill, you had something?
You mentioned $17.56 per hour. Is that
Correct.
for the call?
Yes. Yeah, so we have 3 different rates. We have firefighters have 1 rate. Lieutenants make 45 cents more than that, and our captains make about another 45 cents more than that.
It just seems awfully low.
Well, I said that every time I've heard that number. It was 16-something last year, and I was in shock when I heard that number. These guys drop what they're doing, jump in their pickup truck, drive to a burning building for $17.56 an hour. God bless them.
There's no 8-hour minimum.
And no minimums, that's right. If it's, you know, if it's something simple and they're there for an hour, God bless them.
It just seems low. not to want to spend more money, but I'd go for $20 an hour. Yeah. That's just
Chief, I got to tell you, and I mean this sincerely, I think I speak for the whole board. I think I speak for the whole town. When I say that the 3 departments in this town, and DPW too, pretty much everybody, but the fire department, the police department, the EMS department, you guys, and I couldn't agree with Michael more, and if it is not broke, don't fix it. You guys run an incredible department. I've taken the tour of the building, and I've gotten friendly with Eric and Jesse and you too. And I think it's all boils down to the attitude. When I walk into the fire station, similar to when I walk into the police station, there is no political hierarchy. There's the times I've met with the chief, the deputy, and the assistant deputy, it's been, they know what their position is, but it's been 3 guys talking and running an idea amongst themselves to see what do you think will work. There is no, you know, I'm the chief and you'll do it this way. Maybe that happens behind closed doors. I tend to really not think that's the case. But from what I've seen, I see a group that works together, and then I see the inter-department communications that there is no rivalry between the 2 chiefs. And EMS, there's no rivalry between Tom and the fire department. Everybody pulls in the same direction, and I think that's the whole reason this thing works. So, you know, hats off to you guys. I think you do a fantastic job. I'm extraordinarily impressed in the response times. I'm still in shock for $17 an hour. God bless the guys that are that devoted And I've said this before when it was PPE. Everybody's running out of the burning building, and you guys are crazy enough to put something on and go running into it. And I mean that sincerely. And now you're crazy enough to go running into it for $17.56 an hour. And, oh, if you're a lieutenant and you got 30 years, we give you 45 cents more. I mean, that's great, you know.
How was that rate determined? 17?
So, I'll try to be quick because I hear Mr. Walsh sighing behind me. So I'll be quick.
It's not 8:30.
So back, I'm going to digress about 8 years ago. We have a wage and benefit committee, and again, we do a lot of committees in our department, and it was representatives from each station, and we looked at what firefighters were making. We wanted to look at the department from a wage and benefit standpoint of how we keep this going. Is not an operational point from a wage and benefit point. We assembled the group, and we looked at that time firefighters were making $11 an hour. So what we did is we sent a questionnaire out to all our members, and we had some ideas, and we had them list them as priorities. Would you like to look at more of some retirement program? Would you like an increase in hourly wage? Is it capital equipment? Is it a fitness plan? You know, a bunch of things that we asked them to talk about and gave them their comments. And they came back, and that was the time period that we implemented, we call it our LOSAP program, which is a benefits program, that if a firefighter stays 20 years of service, they receive about $290 a month at age 65 for the rest of their life. If they stay for us with 30 years, of complete service of 30 years, they receive a check of $390 a month at age 65 for the rest of their life. So it's a rewards program. You commit to us for what we're offering. You stay those time periods, we try to reward you when you retire. The other thing they asked is, looking into the future, was they wanted to try to get the wage up to at least something that was respectable. So we worked with the Board of Selectmen at that time, and it was decided that we wanted to increase the rate by $5. So at that point we wanted to get to 11 to 16. So instead of coming to the town and saying, hey, we need $5 more right now, we didn't put the town in that position. That we offered to do it $1 increases every year for 5 years. And the town did that, and that's already gone by the boards. And now we live with cost of living increases or any COLAs that are given, and that's how we ended up where we are now. So I think I can speak for 99. I think I can speak for 100% of our department. No one does it for the money, and nor do we make it about the money. Okay, it's always nice at the end of a month they get a check, and some people might make $1,000. Some people might make $200. But that's something they can take home to their spouse, their husband or wife, and they can go out to eat, or they can go buy something, and, you know, and that's how they use it, and that's how we advertise it. So we don't look for the people in our hiring process that are coming here to make a buck. That's the wrong attitude for our department, and it's never become an issue. So
one other question: the water supply. Those you go to ponds or to, is that right, where you get your water? You fill up tanks,
yep,
and the tanks stay full until you need them for
yep.
fire. It's not like you get a fire and you're going out.
So when we run a structure fire, there's actually 2 incidents going on. The majority of our fire trucks end up at the fire scene with that incident. Another set of fire trucks go to a water supply that you'll never see. And they establish a water supply. They actually establish a draft or a suction out of that pond. And they await for arriving water tankers, a tanker truck, to come, and they fill it. And then that truck goes back to the fire scene. They dump the water into a pool, and the engine company at the fire scene takes the water and uses it on your fire. That has to happen flawlessly. You can never run out of water. So there's many moving parts in any type of incident we have. So
having them in different ponds is just, if the fire is here, you got.
Yeah, it's all geographically located, that we keep our driving times to a minimum of how fast we're transferring the water.
Well, it's not all just ponds either, right? You have some standpipes and so forth.
We have some standpipes, rivers, ponds.
Yeah.
Well, nothing elaborate. They're all privately owned, cranberry growers usually, that we have access to.
Some of the sources were getting difficult to.
Yeah, they do.
I'm just wondering about a well. Is that?
So we have some wells. We have a lot of cisterns that are buried in town. The new fire station has 20,000 gallons of water under the ground that we have access to. The Shaw's in North Carver has 130,000 gallons. The new school has 40,000 gallons. there's plenty of places in town where we know that we can get water if we need to, but it's all about Carver is 40 square miles. 40 square miles, the town of Carver is. It's not like, so you have to have a lot of areas in town that you can get that from. So
those
quickly.
cisterns are constantly being refilled.
Sure.
Automatically, you take it out and the pump goes on.
Correct.
One of the other ways the town continuously supports all of our public safety, but in particular with the fire, is that you look at our capital plan, you look at the equipment that's bought. We make sure that these people that are making $17 an hour, that are out protecting your families and your houses, have, in essence, good quality, state-of-the-art equipment. It's not Cadillac version, but it's good quality, and we make sure that they get that. Just like you approved the PPEs this year, just like we're planning to purchase the tanker, just like 3 years ago we purchased 3 brand new engines. The town, clearly puts a lot of emphasis in making sure these men and women have the infrastructure they need to do their job.
Just the iron in the water here, does that affect the storage tanks?
No, what affects us is actually the sand. When we draft out of ponds, we have to put in a suction device and actually float on the surface. If that water is too shallow, the harder we draw on that, it picks up fines in the sand. And that was actually what wears out our pumps and our valves and becomes very costly. So that's why that can be a problem.
Anyone else? Being none, I'll entertain a motion on the fire department to advance to the warrant to the selectmen $673,315.80. Anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the fire department.
A second. Yeah.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And I believe we're going to have one abstention. So we're back to a 4-0-1, Marianne. And Beth is abstaining because her husband is a call firefighter. So
Thank you all very much.
that would be appropriate. Thank you very much, Chief. Always a pleasure.
He's the only one who got it clapping.
You really take this kind of abuse, Tom? Do they always give you this kind of abuse?
They do. Yeah, but Tom has 7 more years left on his contract, so we're making the most of those 7 years.
We're a very unique system that just works.
I noticed that. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
I just said that to her. Hold on a sec. Here's a cup of mine. Call me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. At this time, I'd like to continue the discussion on the grant program for nonprofits. Beth has been kind enough to do her homework. Beth, I'm just going to turn it to you and let you tell us what you come up with here. And this is obviously a generalized form that we'll be able to look at and tweak to however we need to do it. Did you get a copy of that? I think I did give you one.
I have some more if you need one.
Oh, I have them.
So what I did was I just I pulled together some information from
Night, Meg.
for some different grants that I've seen through the years, and I thought this is just a starting point for us. We could go through it and tweak it however you want to, and any criticism, I just sort of pulled some random stuff together for this. Do you need one? Do you have one? Okay. So what I did first was I tried to put together what our purpose would be. This would just be to establish a policy, we could say and/or guidelines for the town of Carver grants. The next is that we would need a policy. So what I sort of gathered was, in addition to the fiduciary responsibility to provide essential services, the town of Carver desires to support a limited number of special community programs. We could put a number in there if you want to, but depending on how much each grant asks for. I don't know if we want to limit that. And activities that will directly benefit Carver residents. That was something we asked to put in specifically.
I think that's the law, isn't it now? Am I correct in that? I actually, Meg just left, but I thought she had said that the only way that we could provide funds to a nonprofit is if we got back something.
Yes, it has to benefit the town.
It has to benefit our
individually
town.
As a whole.
Okay.
There has to be a benefit for the Carver taxpayers because it's Carver taxpayer dollars that are being given to non-governmental entities.
Gotcha. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no. Annually, the town of Carver, this is where I'm not sure who is going to approve it, but I just put the finance committee for right now, will consider the request. So that's why that's in yellow. We can change that. Grants are awarded on a one-year basis and do not obligate the town of Carver to subsequent or ongoing funding. So then we would have our eligibility. And we can add more to this policy if anybody has anything. So the eligibility, the town of Carver will consider requests for grants to nonprofit corporations that directly serve or benefit the town of Carver residents. Funding will be approved only to legitimate non-governmental organizations that have a valid or current 501c3 registration. That would be for a nonprofit. Grant award eligibility would include, we can change this too, but community service activities sponsored by the town of Carver organizations that benefit the town of Carver residents, including enhancements of established events or programs, capital expenditure projects of eligible organizations that serve the town of Carver residents. For grant award eligibility would not include, so this is stuff we wouldn't accept, town-sponsored projects or annual community events, programs or other governmental agencies, including federal, state, county, city, or specific districts and school districts. Is that true? We're going to keep school separate from, I put that in there, but I wasn't sure. Would the school be eligible to apply?
I don't think so. I don't think the design was for that. I don't think the schools have applied yet on the warrant articles. Am I correct?
I'm not, no, the schools have not applied. But again, this is your policy, and you can draft it the way you want to, but I'm not aware of the school ever applying.
They have not, but can they legally apply?
Well, I mean, they would go through their own budget process.
But I'm thinking more, like, because it has to be a 501c3, which I know PTOs, boosters can be. So, and those aren't necessarily part of the school budgets. So.
Well, they're a different organization. If they're a 501c3, then they're not part of the school. So
right.
If they have a boosters program, I guess technically they could.
Sure, they could, and it wouldn't fall under the school title anyway. I'd prefer to leave the word school in there and let, you know, the non-profit end of whatever they happen to have. If it is I think we lock it down with the 501c3.
Okay.
So.
Leave it. Sorry. All right, and then.
For-profit.
Yeah, for-profit organizations, foundations connected with or established to support public agencies, funding for ongoing operations or salary, and funding for programs with more than quarterly frequency. So that we could take that out, but that would be, they wouldn't come back and ask for us to sponsor them quarterly because we've decided to only go annually.
Yep.
So we can maybe remove that.
We might be able to take that right out.
Probably take that out.
Yeah.
So applications and funding process, grant requests will be submitted by, we could put a date in there. I don't know if you want to do the fiscal year end date or another arbitrary date. Requests need to be submitted on we could create a form if we wanted, that's why that's in yellow, provided by the town of Carver that will include any program description, the budget, other revenue sources, prior year end balance that will be left from if they ask for the grant from the year before. An estimated number of Carver residents served and other supporting information. Applicants would be encouraged to work with, I'm not really sure if it would be the finance committee or someone else.
The intent is to have the finance committee vet this process and then oversee it. We're still, I believe, we're still going to bring the final approval of this would be brought to town meeting. I'm not exactly sure how we're looking to do the end game there. Whether it's just going to be town meeting allows us to spend up to $25,000 and then trust us to do the vetting, or if we're going to go back to town meeting with a list of who we recommend.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
but-
it'd be a challenge to go back to town meeting with the list. So it'd be a town meeting authorizing you $25,000, and then you have this process to go through, and then at the end of that process, whoever gets vetted, you know, grants up to $5,000.
Right.
I think it is read not to exceed total of $25,000.
Right. And then I think the real selling point to this so far is the fact that, A, we're going to require that the funds benefit Carver. We have no way right now when we write a check to one of these companies or these organizations that file a warrant request and we give them the thumbs up at town meeting 2 seconds before the motion to adjourn because everybody wants to go home. There's no process after the fact. So they get their money, whether it's $1,000 or $5,000, and they say thank you very much, and they cash the check whenever it is they cash the check, and then there's no more words spoken until they go get 10 more signatures next year and get it back on the warrant, and we have no way of knowing where that money went. And it's illegal for us to give them money that benefits another town, or that it does not benefit us.
Would it be 100% benefiting Carver?
I don't have that answer.
I do not believe it has to be 100%.
I don't think so.
I think it just has to you have to show how there is benefit to the community. I would say, excuse me, that should be more than 50%, but I don't think it has to be more than, you know, anything more than 51.
Right.
But again, this is your recommendation, excuse me, to town meeting, and you can have it at different numbers.
And I'm not looking to kill somebody with coming back in with, you know, sheets and ledgers and show me that, you know, you bought 4 cups of coffee for the Boy Scouts at you know, 4 hot chocolates at Dunkin' Donuts because the Boy Scouts were sponsoring something. We're not looking to get that nitpicky, but I'm just more concerned with that we didn't give you $5,000 so you went and you funded your Lakeville office with $4,500 of it. Or that, you know, we gave funds to a legal defense fund, and then it turns out they helped one resident in the town of Carver.
Well, it can't be easy. Made easy on them. I mean, Michael said it's increasing the amount.
Right. Well, that's just it. This year it's $23,000 it's being asked for, and the problem that I see with it, and I'm glad that it was brought to our attention, is that it takes 10 signatures on a warrant article. And then, you know, it's a quick paragraph and bang, it's on the warrant. And then we bundle them together on the money article, and it gets literally voted on in the 11th hour and the 59th minute. It's the last article on the warrant, and it gets voted just before, you know, there's a motion to adjourn. And everybody's sitting there looking at their watch and tapping their toes, and they hear that motion come up, and it's an easy motion. It's, you know, what's the big deal? It's only 23 grand. All those in favor, aye, and we're done. Motion to adjourn, let's go home. And then they don't really know whatever happened to that money. Where did it go? Well, I have no idea. We just gave it out last year, and we don't know where it went.
So the number is that fixed to 10, or can that be increased as a requirement?
Well, the way we're doing it here is we're capping it at $25,000, and each grantee can be awarded a maximum of $5,000. So we could.
You say there's only 10 signatures needed to apply.
Oh, I believe that's state law. Am I correct? Yeah, you get any, and this is not to say that we don't institute this program and they still can't do exactly that. They can go out and get their 10 signatures next year and circumvent this entire system if town meeting says we can do this and bring it direct, and we have to put it on the warrant. The difference would be is that one of us, or whoever is chairman of the finance committee, I would expect would get up and say, this is not how we do this anymore. There's a method and a process, and this should have been done this way here, and our recommendation as the finance committee was that you would vote this down. And if that were the case, I would imagine the selectmen would also say you need to vote this down. Right. And the town can sit back and say, well, you know what, we like that program, we're going to pay for it. It's their money. They have the ultimate end goal to do what they want with the money. I personally believe we don't have that right. So this will vet things, I think, more carefully, and it will lend some transparency and much more accountability. And I think that's the whole key word here, is the accountability angle. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, not at all. So we left off before the application deadline to confirm that all required information is provided. I don't know if we should really do this, but you know, we could have them do a letter of intent that they're gonna apply, and then we make sure that they have all the pieces together before the application. It's up to us if we want to leave that in here. That's what this is all talking about. Then it goes on, any application that's incomplete as submitted by the deadline for submission will not be considered for funding. Annually, the town of Carver will sponsor $25,000 in grants. Each grantee can only be awarded a maximum of $5,000.
And that's subject to change by this board. If you guys want to do a different number than 5,000, you can change it. This is absolutely up to, you know,
How much
we pick
do they
these
usually
numbers.
ask for? Because I'm not sure who's asking or how much.
Anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000. Most of them are 5.
I think we had one that asked for 35 or 2,500 or something, didn't we?
Does anyone ever say, okay, well, I'm only going to give you 2? They don't.
No, but
No,
if there
it's
were a
just like-
vetting process, that could,
It's bundled at the end of the town meeting, but
Right.
it passes.
Yeah, it just passes.
but that could become a scenario if it's vetted, and we don't feel as a board that the money they're asking for is not going to fully benefit the town of Carver, or percentage-wise will not benefit enough. We can then say, listen, you know, you're asking for more than we really want to give you. You know, would you consider, you know, we like the program, but would you consider 2,500 instead of 5,000?
Can they go around that
Sure,
recommendation?
they can go around that. They can get, this is, you know, this isn't a dictatorship. They can go right back to town meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, I would recommend that you have these applications like due May 1st.
Okay.
You know, so they're due after town meeting, and then that would give you 2 months, May and June, to vet them and make a decision by the end of June, because the money will be available July 1.
Yeah.
And then that would be your cycle every year. I think this year, as was recommended by one of the selectmen looking at this form, is, you know, this first year, I think you're proposing to establish the process and what
Right.
you want to do for next year. Still take the 5 people that have applied this year and put them through this process, but that they would be guaranteed the money that would be funded at town meeting.
But because they are on the warrant, I don't believe they have to respond to our request.
No, they don't, but you can
Because they can
still...
say, you know, we're just going to let it go the way it's going.
Right. But I think, you know, if they want to come back in the future and they see this how Carver wants to be more professional in managing its taxpayer funds, that if town meeting supports this, you would hope they would do it the following year, which they would then want to be part of the program.
I'd like to send everybody that's applied for the grants, that have applied for the funding, and have it on the warrant. I'd like to send them a request to come in and meet with us, so we can let them know what's coming, and so that we can also let them know what the state law says, and that I think, now I may be wrong with this. I'd like to have counsel, have you find out if you can next time you're talking with counsel. Does anyone have the right to go back to these, even though it's been given by town meeting? Is there a process by which we can say, hey, what'd you do with the money?
I mean, once the money's spent, the money's spent. It really comes down to if they want to come back in the future, you would hope that they would give you that information. You also have the right as the Finance Committee to call these groups in and say, you know, here's what we're proposing to do, this, you know, for going forward. You know, we understand you put your thing in there, we're going to support that money because you went through the process. And at that point, ask them what they've done in the past and what they're going to do in the future. And it'll give you more of a feel for what they're actually doing and not doing. And it's more of a informal process this year than a formal process.
Yeah, I'm not looking to make them jump through. I don't think any of us are looking to make anyone jump through hoops. I just think that we're looking to try to be a little bit more transparent and accountable.
Yep.
You know, this is money that's not ours. And frankly, if you happen to like XYZ charity organization, I'm not sure that we should even entertain using taxpayer funds to give them a check. You like them that much, you write them a check. What you do personally is your business. But at least this is a system by which I can feel better about donating to a charity on behalf of the town, because this whole process is right out in the open. And again, I did not intend to.
No, you didn't. The next thing we said we wanted was the grantee must have spent the full amount awarded in a prior year before submitting for another grant. So that would be the next year. Request will be forwarded to the, I'm not sure, are we forwarding to the selectmen? Is it the town meeting?
I'm not sure what that process is gonna be. I would imagine it gets forwarded for the warrant, so it would go to the selectmen, right?
Well, I mean, once you've got your, let's say this is in year 2, and there was nothing approved at town meeting but for your $25,000. So now you're going through a review, and you got 5 groups, and you want to give each $5,000. You go through that review, you process them, you say, okay, we're now going to vote as a finance committee to award group A, B, C, D, and E the $5,000. I mean, you can have it end there, that it's just the finance committee has been charged by town meeting to allocate this money. Or you could have it after you guys vote on it, then you bring it to the selectmen to have them vote on that as well. You know, it just adds another layer. I'm not sure me speaking, I'm not sure that's necessary for $25,000. But the selectmen may want to opine.
Well, I would definitely want to keep, I'd want to keep finance department in on it too, so I'd have, you know, I'd have the finance department come in on it and have Meg involved in it, just so that she knew what was going on. But yeah, if we got the, you know, the okay from town meeting, then it can just be as a courtesy and respectful to let the selectmen know what we're doing. But, you know, I have no problem with it that way.
Because in essence, you're getting allocated a budget of $25,000, just like any other department is being allocated a budget in there to spend that budget appropriately. So this is your proposal to town meeting. This is how you're proposing to spend the taxpayer dollars, and it's up to town meeting to approve this. If they do, then it's yours to run with. You want to add in additional checks and balances, or town meeting wants you to add checks and balances, or the selectmen want you to add checks and balances, that's all part of this process as you go forward. But you got to start somewhere, and this is a great start.
Okay, so we can go back to that and decide how we want to do it. So the next one is, before funding, each grantee will certify in writing on a form provided by the town of Carver that the funds will be spent in accordance with the grant awarded by the finance committee. The next is, the town of Carver reserves the right to distribute the grant in installments. So that's up to us. I don't know if we do that or not. And annually, the town of Carver requires a detailed description of how the funds were spent.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm not sure if we need installments though on a $5,000.
Nope.
Yeah, I don't think we need installments
okay.
for
So we'll take
$5,000 at most.
We'll take that out.
I like the.
Cost you $18.26, don't it?
Yeah.
Overtime, so you
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we need to put a time in, a date in there, so that, you know, annually pick a date. We'd like an accounting, a detailed, I like that description of, you know, what you do with the money. We also had talked a little bit about how many times a 501c3 corporate organization can apply for the grant over a period of, and the reason I thought about that is because there are some grants that the chief tried to apply for that were not available because he had applied for the previous year or something like that. So some of the, maybe 2 every 4.
Yeah, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't really design a regulation to accomplish everything. So, you know, but because you would have the discretion as to awarding or not awarding, you know, you could come back and say, well, you know what, you've been doing the same thing for 3 years. We've been letting it go, but it hasn't really grown. So, you know, we're going to focus on these other 5 programs next year because they're more energetic and they're going to do more. There's more bang for the buck. You would have that discretion in your review right now versus putting it in there that you can only apply every 3 years or something like that. Because, you know, you might have a fabulous program you want to do every year. That's your choice to do that. And that's why I'm just saying, don't over-regulate it.
Yep.
So that you have some flexibility.
I just didn't want to see it get taken advantage of. I didn't want to fund an operation.
Yeah, but that's your call.
But you're right. We have, if we end up with that discretion, and you know, we might sit back and say, you know, you've gotten it for the, like Michael said, for the last 3 years. We're going to give the new guy a chance.
Yeah, I mean, we have some state programs, grants that sometimes are available where they'll fund you 100% year 1, 80% year 2, 60, 40, 20, and year 5 you're done. You better have implemented it by year 5. I mean, these are all
ongoing
Yeah,
projects that they would need funding each year, not like it's finished in 5 years. Or, yeah.
right.
Yeah, and I've sat on some panels before where, you know, you might put out the letter of intent first to see how many people are going to apply for your grant, and then we have like a form that we fill out. So everybody on the panel has the same form, and you grade the person who's come forward, and then you take those sheets, and that's how it's decided who receives the money. So it's not, you know, us working as a group personally because we might favor somebody. It's, you know, however the sheets were scored. So that's like an idea.
You know, when you look at the schedule of town meeting, which is, you know, the first or second week in April, is that if you have everyone required to do their annual report to you on March 31st, now you actually, in your presentation at the town meeting, can say, okay, group A, B, C, and D did this, this, and this for the benefit. That's why we want another $25,000. But also, at the same time, while they're applying their, putting in their year-end report, they could also then be moving forward to their application, which would be due the following month. And that gets you back into your May 1st timetable for your May and June deliberations or finalizing things. So that at the end, last 3 months, or I guess the second quarter of every year, is when you're actually doing this work. Which actually is probably good for you guys too, because it's after the budget season.
Right. It's pretty quiet.
Yeah, because the budget should be done beginning of March for the town.
Would there be a limit to the number of charities that, I mean, you could have 10 or 15 apply, but is there a limit that?
Oh, to 25,000 total and 5,000 max per group. So if we get 10 that apply, then, you know,
And then we vet them.
obviously we can't
Not
give all
limiting
10 of them the $5 grand.
You get 25 that apply, and you may only give them $1,000.
$1,000, yeah.
But
Nobody's
again,
going to turn down the check, no matter what it is, but
yeah, if you get 25 that apply, you may only say, okay, we went through these, but these 7 are our top priority, and we're going to fund these 7 at different numbers. You know, that's the discretion of the committee. So number that applies is someone they apply. Who has the best proposals? Where you want to put taxpayer funds into, that's where the discretion is of the board. And that's what you're asking town meeting to give you that authority to do.
We're not limiting the number that we accept in.
But you are, by this proposal, you are being capped.
Right.
At town meeting, and here's $25,000, and don't give more than $5,000 to any one group.
so this is the kick around idea. I don't think we need this form to go in the warrant. I think we simply need the outline of what we're trying to do to go in the warrant.
Discuss this more.
And then I'd like to see maybe Kate and Beth can work on the nuts and bolts of it, because you seem to be very familiar with it, and you've run into it before also. Personally, I've never seen a grant application in my life.
Oh, okay, I can bring some
So
random ones in.
you know, I would like nothing better than to, you know, lean on you guys for the skeleton, for the nuts and bolts of it. That'd be great. And I think all we need is the wording to get into the warrant. So I'd like to continue this out maybe till next week, when 2 weeks from now, when hopefully George is here, just so that we can kind of like finalize up the biggest thing I think we need to finalize is the total amount, which I think we pretty much settled on the 25,000 and 5,000 maximum per, and then the vetting process, and then simplify that so that we can get that wording in for town meeting. That sound all right?
So, and what we'll need is this document just, you know, finalized from you and voted on. And then I'll take this and give this to town council, and they'll craft an article.
That was going to be my next request.
And then we'll take care of that article piece that's here. As far as your grant review process and how you want to do that, you've got time to figure that piece out. But this is the framework that you're asking town
Right.
meeting to approve.
Have you guys ever done a grant? Like, do you guys have any thoughts or ideas? Okay.
Nope.
I'm glad you came on board.
It's very good.
So that's where we're at with that. I'll entertain a motion on this just to kind of continue it until the next Finance Committee meeting, when we can just go over a little bit more.
A second?
I make a motion to continue.
A second.
Motion made and seconded to continue this to the next Finance Committee meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous. I'd like a motion to continue this green community program and the stretch code adoption for town warrant till the next meeting also. And the reason I'm asking for that tonight is because, again, George is not here. And I have asked Stephen Cole if he could get me the current building inspector to just give me a synopsis on, I'd like to know how far apart is the current building code from the stretch code. This was brought up at the last meeting. I know that Mark Townsend had said something about he would like to speak with a builder, and I said, that's fine, even though he's not on our committee, but so that he would know, because he's still a selectman, and it's going to wind up before them also.
I have actually reached out to two builders in town, and I have not heard back yet.
Okay, and I have not. I was sick, or you were sick, I was sick, so I didn't get a hold of anybody in Middleborough. So I'm still, actually I talked with my son in Middleborough. I guess the people that were instrumental in getting this through don't work there anymore. So that's going to be, so Rochester may be the next place to go. But that's going to be from a town standpoint. I'm more concerned about the stretch code. And Eric Germain said something very interesting tonight. He kind of scrunched up his nose when I said the stretch code. And he says the problem that they see is that sometimes these houses are being made too tight. And
That's what I asked Seth when he was here. How tight is too tight?
Right. Now our house, my house is post and beam. And, you know, it's the 2x6 and 2x8 and 2x12s up in the ceiling. And we got a window open, a couple windows, all year round, because I personally think that the house is too tight. It's very efficient. I mean, I can, if I get really stingy, I can get a tank of oil for a whole year over there. But, you know, I think it's too tight.
One of the requirements here is when you get the house that tight is that air-to-air heat exchanger down. You get that investment.
So I'm concerned with what are the real, I understand what Seth said, but I'm more interested in what's the real world.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what's the real stretch from the current code to the stretch? And I certainly would support it if it is like they say it is and it's, you know, relatively small, then I'm in favor of that. But if it's going to be a detriment, I don't see anybody building a $450,000 house today and having a $2,000 additional cost to comply with the stretch code.
But the issue with the stretch code, though, is that once you do your HERS test, if you fail that HERS test, then because you can't do that test until the finished carpentry is done. So now you literally have to take apart the house
and fix what's wrong,
and then put it back together for another test.
But isn't the builder responsible for that?
So let's say it's a local builder.
Is the builder not going to be stretch code qualified or whatever it happens to be?
It should be building to the building code. And
I think the question we should ask is, has that ever happened?
It has happened for someone, so for the company he worked for. So I don't know how much it cost, but there was a house that was completely finished that they had to take apart and then fix, put back together.
Well, I know
that's actually not a bad thing from the standpoint of protecting the homeowner.
Yeah.
That if you've hired a company to build your house, and then in essence is a quality control.
Because your HERS was a 57 instead of a 55, so it's still a very efficient house.
Right.
Just not.
It has failed. A failure is a failure. Right. You know, this isn't a game of horseshoes.
Yeah, but then how tight is too tight? You know, you're opening the window.
But didn't we talk about, you know, not to belabor this thing, if we're going to have one more meeting on it, that we'd talk to find out the differences between the stretch code
and the real code.
But actually get someone that's pro and con against it so we can ask those questions. Because the reason I say that is when you go to town meeting, you're going to have people that are pro and
absolutely
against. So we should have like a little pre-warm up here to find out what are the issues so we're not surprised at town meeting.
If you hear back from the builders, would you reach out to me and let me know? And I'm going to ask if Eric would also maybe come to the meeting and talk from his angle.
And then also I can look at some studies too on how tight is too tight.
Right.
I mean, people are really getting into, you know, your whole microbiome and everything. and everything going on now, so I can look into that, because
I talked to a woman friend of mine in Westport. They met with Seth, and she had asked him about the connection that this whole green movement is. Green communities, sustainable communities, and then you go to Agenda 21, and then the UN. You know, so this has got larger ramifications attached to it. That
I think what would make this fail before town
may fall into the conspiracy thing, but
more
it's
Big
viable.
Brother stuff.
I mean, that's what shut it down last time.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing is to have it transparent. Here are the facts. Don't have people making stuff up.
Right,
Here are
right.
the facts.
And that's, you know, that's where we're at with a lot of the negativity in this town, is it's just fabricated and it's incorrect information. I mean, I don't have a problem if the town wants to vote it down, but vote it down for the right reason. Don't vote it down because of something you heard from someone you think you know, from someone who knows someone that said once upon a time. There's no fact behind any of that. So.
All right, so motion to table
seconded.
the discussion on the Green Community Act until our
Motion.
next meeting.
Made and seconded the table for this until the next meeting on the Green Community Act. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes as written.
Seconded.
I'd like to tell you that I already read them, but I didn't. I think there was one. Oh, what I would like with the permission of the board, I'd like to add to the minutes, just anywhere in this, you can put it at the tail end if you want, that meeting was not recorded. We don't have to get into the reasons why, because it was, I made mention of it tonight, and I think it's in tonight's minutes. I would assume you put it in there when I talked about last meeting was not recorded. Okay, I'd like that in tonight's thing, as well as, if we could just get it in here, just a note in here that it was not recorded. And then tonight can be the reason why it was not recorded. I have no problem with that. So if someone would make that amendment change, you okay with that?
Sure.
Second.
Take a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes as amended. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Next meetings, we have 2 of them, and I already have them both posted. I did not mean to jump the gun, but we're trying to coordinate with other departments. So we have the 7th of February and the 21st of February. They're both Thursday nights. They're both 7 o'clock, and they're both in this room. We already have them reserved. I believe the 7th is the town departments in here, town clerk, finance,
Library, COA.
yes, and then the 21st is operations and maintenance and veterans. So, and that will wrap up our budget season. The only other thing we're going to wind up doing after that, I think, is going to be a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, where we're simply going to sit back and give you guys the rundown like we normally do. And if a department head wants to be in attendance, and if the board has a question for him or her, you can ask it. We tried to make it this year so that the department heads did not have to jump through 2 hoops. Typically, they would come to us, and then they got to go to the Board of Selectmen and jump through the hoop. Then we do the joint thing anyway, and we end up at the same end, but they had to do their dog and pony show twice. And I think that's not, I don't think that's fair. I think if the selectmen have an issue with what we're doing, they'll see it in the paperwork. They can certainly ask the question. They can reach out to the department head. There's more transparency than you can imagine here, and the department head isn't taking time off from what he needs to do that night to tie up his evening. So.
You also have the school department budget to review it.
Yeah, the school department, I'm kind of like mixed on that. My thing with the school department, honestly and truly, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll deflect to the board, but I'd rather see just us be the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen, let the school committee show up with that, because there's nothing we can do about that budget anyway. That budget is etched in stone, so when we're all done, we can, you know, moan and groan about it or say, yay, go, but there's nothing we can do about it. It is what it is, what it is. Am I wrong?
Pretty close.
So, and they're going to come before the Board of Selectmen. So I would recommend that, you know, you give us a break and let us just do that at the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen so that we can just, you know, miss the clock and go, and that'll be the end of the school budget, because the selectmen can't do nothing about it either.
Yeah, just for a little bit of clarity, anything that has to do, the net sum of what you're saying is correct. Just the fine detail is that anything that has to do with the academic education component is really in their auspice. You can't tell them how to move money from one education thing to the other. The only thing you have slight flexibility is non-education things, which falls into the buildings and grounds and the buses, which we're already coordinating townwide anyway, so that's kind of separate anyway.
We can't make them make a different cheeseburger, and we can't make them buy new different rolls for their pizza sauce. So, you know, there's just, I'll defer to whatever the board wants. If you guys want to have the school committee come before us, I'm fine with that too. But I think in the
I would just suggest that when we have the meeting with them, that it's I mean, do you typically do one meeting with the school committee, or are there like, you know, it shouldn't be like a half-hour thing. It's probably something where if we want to ask questions about bus transportation and utilities and everything else, that we have enough time to go through some line items versus trying to do that with like 5 other departments, because sometimes the discussions get pretty meaty. You know.
What you may want to do is when you have that joint meeting, maybe that joint meeting is, to your point, is the joint meeting with the school committee and the Board of Selectmen to get their presentation. And then after hearing from the school committee, you would already have all your other votes and recommendations for your other budgets that you would be sharing with the Board of Selectmen after that.
Is that all right? Does that sound okay with you, Mr. Chairman?
Makes perfect sense.
Okay. Is that all right with everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That works for me. So are we okay with those two dates, the 7th and the 21st of February? Sure. At 7 p.m. in this room? And we have Area 58 already signed up for it. And we have the departments already signed on for it. So we're good. Okie dokie. Motion?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Well, that's always, you're always quick on that second. Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night.